For Global Book Network, I'm Zach Feldman. Thanks so much for tuning in here on globalbooknetwork.tv and on our YouTube channel at Global Book Network. Joining us over the phone is an author. He has a new children's book out called My World is Home. It is Todd-Michael Bégin. Todd, thanks so much for joining me here on Global Book Network. How's everything going?
Everything's great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. Tell me all about this children's book. I mean, it's adorable. The cover is just adorable. But it's got a powerful message too.
I do believe it does. It's one of those stories that I sort of pulled autobiographical moments from my own life, from the moments I saw when I was a teacher, and just a little bit of everything in between to sort of create this story, which is a little bit of a slice of life and a little bit of fantasy mixed in. Essentially, it chronicles the week of a young boy as he sort of navigates through school and home life, and he creates this world where he sees everybody else as monsters, as friends, as allies, those sorts of things, and it's got a lot of subtleties about neurodivergence and how kids operate in the modern day, and what they might be going through and may not be able to tell you, and how they might be able to be getting into trouble and not realize it. And it just sort of my intention is to sort of put you there as the reader to imagine that you're in that role again.
It's kind of crazy because this is kind of like the first young adult book that like I feel like needs to be read by parents too. Do you agree?
I think so. One of several of our test readers actually were adults, parents and teachers, and they said they really enjoyed reading it as well, and they enjoyed reading it to their kids. And even though it's meant for about grades 4 to 8, generally, I've had younger readers than that, and a lot of the parents, like I said, have complimented it.
It's really cool too. Talking about like school in general too. I mean, so many people have had hardship when it comes to dealing with school, or or they've had success depending on who you are. I mean, but most of the time, I mean, we've dealt with a lot going into a new into like a new area, a new like people, in general, just dealing with kids sucks. Okay, so like, tell me about kind of like some of the experience you had going to school. What was some of the deals you had to deal with?
Um, so when I was growing up, and I have an eidetic memory, so I remember a lot of this in great detail. I dealt a lot with bullying and exclusion and just being different, and I didn't understand at the time why that was. And it's not until years later when, we can be diagnosed with ADHD and being on the spectrum and things like that. These are just challenges that I thought I had to face and didn't realize why I was the way I was, versus today where it's still sort of the same thing, but there's a lot more answers to those questions. And a lot of what I pulled from the book, like for example, the main character who hangs out with the person who's bullying him just because he wants to be sort of like him,
Yeah.
even though he doesn't realize he's being bullied. Sort of the same thing, same way the way I was growing up too. Like, you want to be popular, even though in the end you kind of realize that those people weren't worth your time, sort of deal. So, and a lot of the high fantasy and adventures, and especially the furnace monster, that was directly pulled from my nightmares when I was a child as well.
Tell me about that. What was it? What was your nightmare about?
Um, it was at the first house I lived in, and there was a furnace right at the bottom of the stairs when you walked in, and it had like two bolts and a name brand, and it looked like a face. And I would
My
have
God.
nightmares about it every night until we moved out of that house. So when I was thinking of something for the main character to dream about, I was like, I got it.
Oh my gosh. I mean, dealing with that, I mean, that sucks.
Oh
But
yeah.
listen, I'm glad you went and got through it. You grew up and you were able to fight your demons because you told it in a book. So I mean that's a pretty much an accomplishment and wiped out of your brain, right?
I'd like to think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, it's kind of interesting and fascinating the way, our brains operate.
Yeah, 100%. When you were writing this book, obviously, you were dealing with trying to go back into your history. Was that difficult to do? Was that difficult to process and remember? Your your not even high school, it was elementary school. Your
Mhm.
elementary school career?
Not at all, because like I said, when I look back with fondness. All the adventures, the friends that I did have that were like always there for me that I didn't appreciate at the time, I'm much more appreciative of now because it's not like a popularity contest for me anymore. I realize those were the people that I should have been around, kind of thing. and just it's a lot of interesting memories and moments, and looking back into dreams and books that you read as a child, and also mixing it in with, because I've been working with kids since probably the early 2000s, maybe 2004, I think, as far back as, I get to see a lot of what kids have been going through for almost, yeah, I guess over 20 years now. And
Yeah.
that's also fascinating and inspirational for when I write.
Being that you're a teacher now, I mean, does that also play an effect on how you see school now?
Not really. I'm actually not practicing teaching at the moment. Like I sort of didn't give it up. I retired from it, I would say, just because it's not a job that I enjoy doing anymore.
Hmm.
Um,
How
however,
come? Actually, I want to ask you, how come?
it's I had a pretty bad experience on the last school I taught at. There was a lot of bullying amongst the staff and a lot of political issues that just wore me down and made me just not want to do it anymore.
That's
And
fair.
so, yeah, I hold the good times, like my students wonderful always, and I hold those good times in high regard, and I don't miss it, but at the same time, I'm happy that I got to have those experiences.
That's awesome. And listen, and I'm glad you got out of that situation because obviously that was just sounds like a toxic one in the first place.
Yeah.
But obviously, you wrote this book kind of during that time, correct? Or am I wrong? And actually, no, you didn't really write it during this time, but I mean, you're reflecting on that time from being working in there too. Did that have any effect at all either?
A little bit, yes. Mostly from my students, I gathered sort of ideas from. However, with some of the teacher characters and principal character, I did pull a bit of inspiration from some of the rougher moments to create sort of that antagonistic role, because I like to think that most teachers are warm and comforting and always there for you. But you get the ones that are sometimes cranky and loud, even though they don't intend to be. And that's the kind of archetype I wanted to portray for like the teacher character in my book.
So it's fair to say that Mrs. Stahl has more of a personal role than in your life.
A little bit, yeah.
That's fair. I want to also ask too, what was it like working with Cassia, who was the illustrator on the book?
Well, Cassie's wonderful. We've been friends for a really long time, like over 15 years at this point, I think. And I cannot draw. Like I cannot draw at all. Um, in
Same
fact,
here.
in teachers college, you had to take art, and I almost failed out of teachers college because I could not pass art. And I'm just like, art's supposed to be subjective, but that's besides the point. I just cannot draw. And I was actually looking for people to do illustrations for me. And I was reaching out to the schools to see if the kids wanted to contribute because then they could get credited. But by the end of it, I reached out to Cassia because she showed me some of her art, and I said, "Would you be interested?" And she had me, hey, she had drawn something for me like later that day, and I was like, "Wonderful!" And since then, she's excited to draw for the second book. She did all the work on my website, and she's been funneling posts into my social media accounts for the past few days as well, just to get some of the promotion going. And I couldn't have done any of this without her. She is wonderful.
That's incredible, and that's really really cool. I mean, the illustrations came out beautiful, so it's really really cool. You were able to collaborate like that, and then it became into something really great. The response has been awesome. I've been seeing too, online. I mean, it's been blowing up a little bit too. Tell me about kind of the response on your end. Like, how's your family been taking seeing the book?
I cannot thank my community enough. Like I said, I live in a small town, about 2,000 people. So when the book first got published, I said, 100 orders? No, I'll buy 50. Okay, so I purchased 50 orders. They sold out before the book was even here. Like, I was okay. So I've put another order in for another 50. It's not quite here yet, but I've already sold through 30 of them. So all I've got left is to sell through 20 more, and I autographed them all and wrote personal messages to everybody. And all that I've been receiving from my family and friends and even acquaintances that I somewhat know around the community is wonderful job. This is wonderful. I can't wait to read this with my kids. And just really positive feedback. And we're all our own worst critics, but it's very humbling for me, and I really really appreciate all of the wonderful feedback and support from this community and beyond.
100%. And it's really really cool that there's a book like this that exists now because it's so important to not only talk about the good sides of school but also the bad sides of school too. And I think it's important also for kids to learn that they're not the only ones who are dealing with this too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I want to ask you too, what happens next with this series? Are we going into a series with this, or are we? Is this a one off, and then we're going on
We
to
are
something else?
we are absolutely going into series with this.
Hell yeah, awesome. How do we see that series playing out?
So this is the second book, completely finished,
Hey, there you go.
typed out. It's called Adults Ruin Everything, and it follows the same formula as the first story since it is a series. It takes place a few weeks later after the first story concludes and picks up from there. It has some new characters, some older characters sort of aren't mentioned as much due to circumstances, and it has a little bit of a more mature message in the writing. I don't want to give away too much, but I do have ideas for like a third entry already, and I'm also planning a spin-off because in the second story they mentioned the two writer characters want to collaborate on a like a series of short stories, and I wanted to bring the short stories to life as well.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. I'm excited to see that come out too. And you can always get, obviously, My World is Home on Amazon and everywhere books are sold too. But for those who want to keep in touch with you though on social, where can they go?
Um, so our website is live now, middleschoolauthor.com. And we have a Facebook group called My Far Out Life as a Middle School Author. Our Instagram and TikTok are at Middle School Author. Our Twitter or X is just at My World is Home. And I think that's all. Yeah, that's all.
Good. Very good. Well, Todd-Michael, thank you so much for joining me here on Global Book Network to talk about a little bit about My World is Home. I really hope people could take a look at it and read it, and check out how important this story is too, and share it with their kids too, because it's just so inspirational. It's really, really fun.
Thank you so much for having me on, Zach. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, anytime. You've been watching Global Book Network here on YouTube and on globalbooknetwork.tv. Check out all of our past interviews here on globalbooknetwork.tv and join us here next time for another author interview. I'm Zach Feldman. Thanks so much for joining us here on Global Book Network.